Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 49. The film industry is about saying no to people, and inherently you cannot take no for an answer. James Cameron.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, guys. I am your host, Alex Ferrari. Head over to freefilmbook.com, that's freefilmbook.com, to download your free film audiobook from Audible. And today's show is sponsored by USC Film School's only online course, Directing the Actor, taught by the amazing Nina Foch. You can download that at indiefilmhustle.com/USC. Today, guys, we have Stephanie Palmer on the show. She wrote an amazing book called Good in a Room, How to Sell Yourself and Your Ideas and Win Over Any Audience. She is a very, very cool lady. She has a heck of a bunch of cool stories. We talked about being an intern on the set of Titanic, which she was also a drug mule, or a mule, not a drug mule, but a mule of some sort. We'll go into that story later. She's also worked on amazing films like Legally Blonde, one of my favorite, Armageddon, Con Air, and also worked for Jerry Bruckheimer Pictures, where she got a lot of experience, as well as being a director of creative affairs at MGM, where she listened to thousands of pitches over the course of her career, where she then decided that this was a space of the film industry that needed real help, because people really had no idea how to pitch themselves, how to pitch their stories, how to pitch their screenplays, how a director could pitch their vision for a film, all of those things. So she put it all together in a book and has now made it her lifelong mission to help people, not only filmmakers, but people, to help show them how to sell and pitch their ideas. Now, one thing that went a little bit wrong technically on this episode is I was barely able to get Stephanie on the phone. She's very, very busy, and I was only able to get her over the phone. So the audio quality is going to be a little bit less than you're used to, but still very acceptable. But the information on the show is remarkable. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Stephanie Palmer. Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got in the business?
Sure. I started as an unpaid intern on the movie Titanic when I was a senior in college, and then I moved from that job to being an assistant at Jerry Bruckheimer Films, and I worked on movies like Armageddon and Enemy of the State and Con Air, and I was assistant to the president, so we were involved in all aspects of development and production. And then I moved to MGM as an assistant, and then got promoted to the story editor, where I was in charge of supervising the staff of readers and making sure that all of the scripts that came into the studio were properly handled. And then after that, I got promoted to being the director of creative affairs, where my job was basically to help determine which projects we wanted to purchase, develop, and produce. So I read lots and lots of screenplays and heard lots and lots of pitches.
Okay. Now, now you just dropped that little, but like you were an intern on Titanic, so I'm not going to let that go.
Sure.
Please tell me a little bit about that experience.
Well, I can tell you that my first job on that was to drive boxes that I was not to open over the Mexican border because I look like a nice, innocent girl from Iowa, which I am, and I think the production staff thought, well, she's not going to get stopped by Border Patrol. In retrospect, I never should have done that, and I would not do that again. But as I was a college student and desperate, like, wow, I don't know anything. I'm going to be on this giant movie. How exciting. I'll do whatever they ask me. That was my first job.
Wow. So you were a mule, basically, is what you told me.
Pretty much, yeah. I truly don't know what was in the boxes, but it was very clear I was not to know.
To this day, you don't know what's in those boxes.
I have no idea. Yeah, no. Mm-hmm.
and I had a few friends of mine who worked on Titanic too, and I've heard the legendary stories of Mr. Cameron and how he was back then. I'm assuming you can concur.
Yes, I mean the funny thing is I one of my jobs was also to be in the production office and just be basically like a runner or anything that they needed. And so I did my best to just disappear when I would be there unless there was something that was needed. And it was pretty amazing to get to sponge in that information and see how decisions were made, see whose opinion was listened to and who was ignored, just to be sort of in that pressure cooker of so many decisions happening. I mean, there was so much at stake at that time.
Okay.
No one thought they were making a huge financially successful movie. Everyone thought that it was going to be the most expensive movie ever made, that bombed.
Right. Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I mean, we've all studied and know that story quite well. But it's so interesting to hear. It's so interesting to hear from somebody who was actually inside the belly of the beast. And someone so young, like you just starting out. It's not like you were a seasoned pro in the belly of the beast. You were a innocent little lamb in the middle of.
Yes, I was totally innocent. Don't misunderstand me that anyone was consulting my opinion on certain things.
Of course.
I mean, maybe what kind of cups we should have, in the coffee machine or something. But was I physically there, and did I get to witness, get to be on the giant set where on the water where one side looks like the Titanic and the other side is a giant construction site with the big, industrial cranes and elevators and all of the extras speaking Spanish in their beautiful, Titanic gear, playing cards and drinking soda and whatever.
Amazing.
I mean, it was very exciting.
So, so you go right from Titanic, then I guess you go to another small company like Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yeah.
Which is, and you become an assistant there. Can you tell me what you learned while being at that company, which is obviously in its heyday, and he's still very big, obviously today. But there was a moment in time for about 20 years or more that Jerry was making some of the biggest movies going out in Hollywood. So, how was it? What did you learn from that experience?
It was fascinating. The best part of my job was that I got to listen in on phone calls, and it was my first experience realizing that it's a common Hollywood practice where executives would have an assistant, and the assistant is listening in, on both sides. Mm-hmm. So there'd be two people having a conversation, but there's actually four people listening in. That's a standard practice, but it was fascinating to me that I got to really listen into all the negotiations and all the pitches and any, rolling calls and placing calls for my boss, and just really getting to see how deals happen at that really high level, because obviously, at that time, but still is definitely the case, people want to be in business with Jerry because he gets movies and TV shows made at a very high level.
So at a very high level.
People want to work with him.
Exactly. Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember the first time I was on a call with an executive, and that happened to me. Like the assistant just like, he's like, "Hey, Tom, did you get that?" And just Tom popped in. I'm like, "What the hell just happened? Was Tom listening to this the entire time?"
And the charade, it's so silly that the charade that people pretend that the person isn't listening in, but they both know that they are, and it's so silly, but yes.
It is. Now, while you were at Jerry Bruckheimer's company, did you hear any pitches that turned into a movie that we might know, or a TV show that might know?
Sure. Remember the Titans was pitched while I was there. Coyote Ugly was pitched while I was there. Is it called Down and Under? I'm thinking there was a Scott Rosenberg Kangaroo project. I've kind of blocked it from my head. Whatever that one was, that was pitched. Jerry
McDonald was in that, right?
That one. A lot of TV division was basically just starting at that time. Okay. So they just kind of exploded out of the gates. So a lot of the TV shows were pitched during that time, and they just have a huge development slate. So there were always multiple projects that, from deep development, pre-production, in production, and post-production, basically all happening at the same time.
So exactly. I was going to say, at an early part in your career, you had access to basically the upper echelon of Hollywood, essentially, whether you being an intern or an assistant. You were playing with the boys, not maybe at their level yet, but at least you were there. You were a fly on the wall, and that must have been invaluable.
Absolutely. It was. It was an incredible experience. Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you a question. You've heard thousands of pitches, I'm sure, thousands and thousands of pitches over the years. Why do some pitches connect and others don't? Is there a secret sauce of some sort?
I think that there are some things that people do well when pitching that anyone can implement, and it doesn't matter the kind of project that you have. I mean, some projects are naturally more easily pitched. You know, a lot of comedies are generally easier to pitch, or movies that are simpler in plot than character-driven pieces or multiple storylines that are, you know, interwoven. Some of those projects can be a lot harder to give a verbal pitch for. But for any project, one of my the simplest piece of advice, but that so many people neglect to do, is to lead with genre. So if you're going to give a verbal pitch, it's that genre that gives context to the listener. And without that crucial piece of information, it's easy for the person who's hearing the pitch to make incorrect assumptions about a story and get confused. So, for example, if a writer tells me that he's got a story that involves the CIA, I could assume it's a thriller like 3 Days of the Condor, when it's really a drama like The Good Shepherd, or a comedy like Meet the Parents. So simply saying my project is a romantic comedy or my project is an action thriller is my first tip. It's so simple. It's something that anyone can do, but it's shocking how rare that is.
Really? Like people just start going into their story and not tell you the context of their story, because you could go into a thriller and then it's spy.
There's a spy. They start talking all about the spy, and then the spy starts. So you either think it's a drama or a thriller or a comedy, but then whatever you think, the character starts acting in a really ridiculous way, and you're like, "What are they talking about? Why are all these people dying? I thought it was a comedy," or vice versa.
Right.
And so just simply describing the genre at the beginning is key.
Okay. Now, are there beats in a pitch? Like, is there a pace that you should follow? Is there some sort of because, like, you know, obviously there's a structure for screenplays. Is there a structure to a pitch?
There can be. It's not one size fits all, because obviously projects are so different. I'm looking for a pitch to be memorable and repeatable, because it's extremely rare that the first time you pitch a project, someone says, yes, I want to buy it. The way that projects are purchased is that you pitch it to one person. Maybe you pitch it to a producer, and the producer says, oh, I'm really interested. Okay, now let me take it to a financier. Let me take it to a studio, and they repitch it. And then the studio executive, junior studio executive says, okay, let me pitch it to my boss, who's the president of the studio. It's like you need to have something that's repeatable and memorable, so that if someone's hearing it for the first time, they can say, okay, I got it. I'm going to go repitch this to someone else on my team or someone up the chain.
What you just explained sounds just torturous. Just like all the bureaucracy that goes on to, like, I got to go to this guy, then this guy, and this guy, and this. You might have to repitch this thing 10, 15 times before, if you're lucky.
100, 10, 15. I mean, 100. Yeah,
you're right, because you're constantly pitching to the actors. You're pitching to different. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, any actor, you should be in it. Here's why. Other executives, financiers. That's a huge process. The marketing department. All the way. And at the end, a lot of times, if it's a really good pitch, it's that same pitch that's frequently used in the trailer to pitch the movie to a potential audience.
So pitching is basically a skill set that most people don't have, and it's probably one of the most crucial in filmmaking in general.
I think it's the second most crucial. I think, one, you have to be able to write. If you're a writer, you have to be able to write. Without that, there's nothing. But if you have that skill and that talent, the next most important, as far as having a successful career, is being able to pitch effectively. Now, because the people who are good in a room, like if there's two people who have an equally beautifully written script, the person who pitches it more effectively, their movie's going to get made. They're going to get hired.
It's all about marketing, and this is just another form of marketing. Marketing the idea of it's you're basically marketing the idea.
Exactly.
That's what a pitch is. So how long do you have as a general statement to grab someone with a pitch? Do you have 30 seconds? Do you have a minute? Or before they just start tuning out? Like, how long do you really have to grab somebody? Or is it just varies per person, I guess?
I know that I don't have a specific number. I feel like it's under 90 seconds. I mean, it's amazing how long 90 seconds can be. Like, for example, I'm going to be leading the pitch conference at the American Film Market this Saturday. And I just this week have been reviewing. So anyone who wants to pitch from the stage submits a video and to me, and then I review them with this other panel, and we decide who's going to pitch from the stage. And those pitches are limited to 2 minutes, but it is amazing how long 2 minutes is. I mean, it is so hard to pay attention for a 2-minute pitch.
Yeah, I could absolutely. I've sat in many a film festival watching a short film sometimes, and you just or features, and you're just like, oh my God, just stop.
Yes, exactly.
No, please, this is the longest 20 minutes, longest 5 minutes of my life.
Right, and you want it. Yes, you want it to be great, but 2 minutes can be very, very long. So the goal for an effective pitch is really to pitch it as simply and as short as you can make it, that still conveys the idea clearly.
Now, what most turns you off about a pitch?
I mean, if there's nothing that makes you care about any of the characters or want to find out what's going to happen. I mean, I think the surprising thing about a lot of pitches is just how that people are so close to their project, they love it, they know it so well, that they have lost perspective on what someone who's hearing it for the first time needs to know to be able to understand. I mean, a lot of pitches are totally incomprehensible.
They're all over the place.
You really can't say, if someone will finish pitching, you'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Who is the main character? What is the setting? What happens in the story? What happens in the beginning, middle, and an end? There are a lot of times you have no idea.
It's because writers, they just know the story so well that they assume certain things as they're pitching and forget those little details.
And it's totally understandable. Yeah, completely. It's totally understandable because you're so close to the characters, you're so close into all the details, but you forget, know the characters so well, but the audience or the person listening is hearing them for the very first time.
Right, exactly. Now, this is something I know a lot of people don't do, and I'd love to get some insight from you what they should do. What kind of research should a writer or filmmaker do on a company or an executive before they pitch the story?
Great question. This is so key to having a successful pitch. It is figuring out basically any individual company, studio, production company is looking to replicate their past success. So if they have had a movie or TV show that has done really well, the more that your project can be, if it's in a similar genre, that's great. If it has a similar main character or milieu or budget range, even anything that's similar to what they have done in the past that has done well, it's just going to increase the odds that your project will sell. It doesn't mean that they're looking to make the identical movie again, although frankly, sometimes people are. It's more like,
are we talking about Hollywood?
I know. It's more like, hey, they really figured out how to market this indie thriller, or they really figured out how to market this mainstream high school comedy, and so they know what that audience is looking for. They know the channels to get this out there. They know what it takes, and so they already are looking for, okay, we figured it out with this one. Now where's another project that we can release next year at the same time for the same audience that's going to deliver the same experience that this previous success did. So
and a lot of times people just
go ahead.
No. So a lot of times, a lot of people will, some people I'm imagining would have at some point in time have pitched horror movies to Disney.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
And that's just lack of research.
Yeah. And so it's figuring out what has this company done in the past? What do they currently have in development? Anything that you can find out about the specific people that you're meeting. One of the questions that I like to ask in a meeting is, what's something that you're excited about this year? something, a sort of open-ended question that gives the executive or the producer that you're meeting a chance to brag about something that they're working on, like, oh, we just made this big deal with this project. I'm really excited about it. But it also gives you insight into what's working well for that person. So if there's a way for your project to have similar themes or similar budget or similar time frame or any of the aspects, you can tell what's important to the person by asking them to brag about themselves, basically.
That is a beautiful tip. It's a really, really beautiful tip, because that is, anytime you can have somebody that you're trying to pitch feel good about themselves and talk about themselves is a good
They're just going to like you.
Right.
They'll like you because you're making them feel good about themselves.
It's communication 101, but it's something that a lot of people don't do. So can you talk a little bit about the business side of being a writer? Because a lot of writers just like, I just want to write. I just want to I just want to tell my story. I don't want to get into the Hollywood business side of stuff. I'm like, well, then you're never, ever going to make it as a writer or as a filmmaker. So can you talk a little bit from your perspective of writers, because I know you work a lot with writers, what they should do, how should they structure their career, how should they come out to the town, what kind of projects things like that. The business side.
I'm happy to talk anything business. I'm happy to talk money. Anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to talk about it.
Great.
For me, for writers, the biggest mistake that I see many writers who want to break in do is that they have they know that they need to have more than one project, or a lot of people know that. So, which is the case. You definitely need to have at minimum 2 to 3 really polished projects before you start marketing yourself and really try to break in. It's not a business where it's going to be a one-hit wonder. Like, people always say to me, "Oh, I'm willing to be a one-hit wonder. I want to be a one-hit wonder," but that really isn't possible.
Right.
It's too competitive. It's too competitive, and people need to know. Agents are only interested in working with people who are going to have enough longevity and enough projects to be able to sell multiple projects, because the first projects rarely sell for very much, so that the agent makes very little money at the beginning. So they want to know, I'm going to be with this person and representing them over a period of years and a number of deals to make it financially worth me investing in this person. So there really isn't the way to do it as a one-hit wonder in general. But as I was saying before, the biggest mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they write a bunch of different projects in different genres and also different mediums. Like, they might have a TV show, they might have a reality show, they also have a indie thriller, and they have a studio comedy. And they believe or they think, okay, this is really going to show that I have a lot of range and I can write a bunch of different things. But unfortunately, how that is perceived is more like the jack of all trades, master of none, and that executives, the decision makers who are hiring writers, want to hire specialists. Like, they want to hire the person who knows everything that there is to know about comic book movies for their comic book movie, or they want to hire the person who has watched every horror movie, knows the ins and outs of everything that's coming out in the future, has been done in the past, what are the classics, and make sure that their horror movie really delivers for that, the horror fanatic audience. They don't want someone who, they're not looking to hire someone to write a bunch of different projects. It's really the way to break through is to be a specialist in one area. So I recommend that people develop multiple projects in a similar genre. They don't have to all be identical, but at least closely related, so that they can show that they have a specialty. Then when they break in and they've shown that they have this facility and expertise in one area, at that point it is so much easier to branch out and do something else. But you can't try and break in with a wide variety of genres and mediums. Like, it's different people. It's a different business. It's a different career path to become a TV writer than it is to become a film screenwriter.
Oh, absolutely. It's two different worlds. Well, I mean, at least TV writers are, I guess I would imagine, well, TV, you work a lot more. Like, you have a steadier paycheck if you're on a show, as opposed to a screenwriter. Maybe one year you get paid, maybe the other year you don't.
It's true. It's a different model. Yeah, it's a different model,
Right.
but also that TV writing is generally done in the office. Like it is an office job where you go to the office and you work with a team of people, whereas screenwriters
Mm-hmm.
generally work by themselves at home, or, maybe they have an office space, but they're working solely on their own and on a project that has a long time frame, whereas TV is tight deadlines, working on a team in an office extremely intensely.
Right, exactly. And that's a good point, because I think a lot of filmmakers and writers in general make that mistake. Like, as a filmmaker, you're like, I'm going to make a comedy, and then I'm going to make a horror movie, then I'm going to make an action movie, and you send it out, and people are like, well, what are you? You're like, you can't do that just yet.
Not yet, and that agents don't know how to sell people who have a bunch of different projects, so it makes them less interested. And something that a lot of people say to me also is like, well, but I don't want to be pigeonholed. And I understand that, but I say, why wouldn't you want to be pigeonholed? That means that you are known for doing something really, really well, and likely you are paid extremely well. Like, the people who are known for doing something very specific, like whether it's the Michael Bay or it's David Mamet or it's Guillermo del Toro, anyone who has an identifiable niche or brand, you're like, yeah, but people keep coming back to that person. They keep offering them movies. They keep offering them more and more money to do movies in that genre. It doesn't mean that you always have to say yes to those things, but wouldn't you so much rather be in that position where you're turning down work because you have this great reputation in a particular area than having no one want to work with you and not having any jobs because you're worried about being pigeonholed?
Right. I'm still looking forward to the Quentin Tarantino comedy, slapstick comedy, coming out soon, I'm assuming.
I will be interested in that as well.
I think if people could argue that a lot of his movies are a little bit comedic.
They have comedy, absolutely.
He's a wonderful comedic writer, but I want like a Naked Gun. Quentin Tarantino's Naked Gun. That I would really be interested. Tarantino's Airplane. That's what I'm looking for.
Someone will make a short of that and put it on YouTube, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I mean, and a perfect example, like you said, Michael Bay. Michael Bay is Michael Bay, and he's great at what he does. He makes amazing, pretty pictures. If you like him as a filmmaker, you don't like him as a filmmaker, at least he is known for doing that. You can't argue that his images are just stunning. Like what he puts on the screen, they're stunning. And honestly, there is nobody else in the business who does what he does. Like they call it Bayham. It's an actual term for it now. Right. It's like, and anytime you get like a Tarantino-ism, when you get to that level of specialty, and a Woody Allen-esque or Robert Altman-esque, then you have arrived at a certain level in your career where like that's a niche. That's the specific thing they do. And now, look at Spielberg, for God's sakes, who started off in a horror movie, basically. That's a horror thriller with Jaws, and that blew him up. He did a couple before that, but Duel was similar. And then he kind of branched off into other things, but it took him time to get out of that. And then we won't talk about 1941 because he doesn't like to talk about 1941. So let me ask you, what inspired you to create Good in a Room and give back to writers and filmmakers?
Well, I had been an executive for a number of years, and I felt I had gotten to work on all these different projects, and I really liked the production process, and I loved the development process, but the life of being a studio executive is very stressful, and there really aren't breaks. I mean, it's a job where you have to be on call 24 hours a day, and I just sort of saw my future and thinking, how much longer do I want this to be my day-to-day existence? And I knew that the end was coming. It wasn't something where I said, okay, now I want to move up and be, work my way up to being a studio president or CEO, something like that. It just came to a point where that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to have. And so I was thinking, well, how can I take this experience that I've had and take the best part of my job, which is working with writers? That's the part that I love and would do all the time, anytime. How could I make that what I do on a day-to-day basis? And so I thought about it for a while and took some business classes and decided that I would start a consulting firm. So when I left MGM, I started Good in a Room, and it's now been almost 10 years, which is hard to believe. And
wow.
I
That's
started
impossible.
working.
You're 21, aren't you?
Yes, I am, absolutely. But I'm aging backwards. So I started working one-on-one, just coaching writers who were pitching projects, and out of that I was interviewed on some TV shows and got a book deal, and so I wrote my book also called Good in a Room, and that was published by Random House, and then continued to expand my consulting business, and now have created some online courses just because I knew that, well, one, I can't consult with everybody that wants to, just because I'm one person, and it's not a scalable business to work one-on-one. I can only meet with so many people in a day. And then that I also wanted to make the information that I share in consults in helping people pitch more effectively and sell their scripts, that I wanted that to be available to people wherever they were in the U.S., especially if they didn't live in Los Angeles, since for a lot of people, I know living in Los Angeles isn't possible, but they still want to get their work considered. And so I've created an online course that is called How to Be a Professional Writer, and it is a series of videos and ebooks that people can work through to really see how projects are sold, what they need to do to get their work considered.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, can you tell me a little bit about, because I saw online a video of yours that you were talking about your experience pitching Good in a Room to the publishers.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience, which is ironic but yet very entertaining?
Well, so I was interviewed on NPR's The Business, which is an awesome show that's still going on. It's still on the air or on the radio. And after I was on The Business, I got a phone call from an agent, actually one of the biggest book agents in the world, even though I didn't know him. And he said, I think that what you have is worthy of being a book. I think you should write it. Why don't you write a book proposal and then come to New York, and I think I can help you sell it. And I was like, this never happens, but amazing. Great. Okay, I'll do it. So I ran out and got every book about how to write a book proposal and put together my proposal and went to New York. I was all excited and got into the first meeting with publisher, and they were asking me, sat down on the couch in the meeting, and there's the executives, and they're like, so tell me about your book. And I just totally froze because I had not ever been in the position of being the writer actually pitching. I was always the person on the other side of the desk asking the questions of the writer. And so even though obviously my book is called Good in a Room, in that first meeting, I absolutely wasn't. It was mortifying. And then I went back to my hotel room and got my act together and was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And thankfully I had other meetings that week where I, focused on, I got my materials together, and I then was able to deliver a good meeting. But it was kind of a shocking role reversal that you would think I would have known ahead of time, but it all happened so fast that I was caught off guard.
You were caught off guard, and then thank God your book's around now to help people like yourself.
Yes, exactly. I can go back and read my own book the next time to make sure that I'm prepared. Exactly.
Exactly. So when you were at MGM, you were basically the gatekeeper, right? The first level of getting movies made, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me any funny stories of a pitch that you were just like, what is this?
Well, there were certainly people who would come in costume. There was one gentleman who came wearing only a diaper and holding a large samurai sword. That stands out.
I love that movie. I love that movie, by the way. That's one of my favorite movies, the Diaper Samurai Sword movie. I love that.
There also was a couple brother-sister writing team who were pitching a romantic comedy, and they were acting out the main characters until the point that they were leaning in for a kiss.
Oh.
They didn't kiss, but it was extremely uncomfortable. There also was this poor gentleman who was so nervous, and I think he'd been drinking, but he left. He was so nervous and sweaty that he left a writer-shaped sweat stain on my couch.
That's brilliant. You should write a book of these.
Oh, dear.
Good in a Room, the second edition.
It would be called Bad in a Room. Yes.
Bad in a Room. Yes, it's a sequel, Bad in a Room. Oh, that would be brilliant. Wow. So I'm assuming that people that come in costume, that's not a good sign, or is that have you guys gotten? Did you get anything
it's funny.
good from that?
I generally don't like gimmicks like that. I mean, I think because really especially at the studio level, if you hire this person, it's going to be for, a minimum of about $100,000. You're going to be working with them over a year. It's not like you just buy their project and then say sayonara and never talk to them again. You're going to be developing the project with this person. And so you want them to be a professional. So in general, I'm not a fan of gimmicks, but there are times, and there certainly are stories of people who have brought in some sort of prop or video reel or something that really tells the story in a unique way. So it's not that I can't say no visual aids ever, but in general, things that are gimmicky don't really, in my opinion, don't really help the story. You want to be able to tell the story in a really compelling way that the executive can see the movie and then say, yes, this is a movie I want to see.
Now, you brought a good point up when you said video reel. Are there times where people come in and use video as a pitch tool, like they literally just play a DVD of like a story? Either how would that be? Is it proof of concept? Is it them talking? Is it animatics? What
all of the above. It's visual aids, if they have any sort of animation or there's some sort of creature or they want to show a sense of, especially if they want to direct, certainly that's even more common. But people are doing more and more demos to prove the concept that they're pitching. This is also can be kind of a slippery slope because, especially at the studio level, people have such high expectations for production value that even though it may be amazing, and it is amazing the things that filmmakers can do, from their home computer, it may not live up to what a studio can do because their budget is just so obscenely high for creating, a trailer or proof of concept reel or something. But there definitely have been people who can create something that's really compelling and they need to show it in video for a movie to get made, and that does happen with some frequency, certainly.
So I don't know if you knew this, but I come from a post-production background, and
cool.
I've been a VFX supervisor and post supervisor and all sorts. Everything in post I've done at one point or another. And indie filmmakers many times you were saying the high level of production value. A lot of independent films that try to do visual effects, they'll do them and they'll try to be so ambitious with it. And I keep telling them, like, sometimes I get this conversation of like, all right, so I have this shot. Did you see that shot in Avengers? I'm like, you need to stop right there.
Right.
You can't afford craft services or the coffee budget Avengers. Okay.
Right.
Just let it go. You need to do something that's within the realm of doing what you can do very, very well, as opposed to trying to be so ambitious. I would rather be able to hit a nail on a hammer really, really well than try to build a house by myself.
Beautifully said. And I totally support that. Yes. Second that.
So are there any final advice you would give on delivering an amazing pitch?
Let's see. I will say that, one thing that is super common that is also easy for people not to do is don't give a positive opinion of your own work. So, for example, this is a great story and you're going to love it. I mean, how many times have you heard that, right? Or this is going to be amazing. right? So just like every parent,
Right.
including me, thinks their child is brilliant, and every dog owner thinks that their pet is adorable, it's expected that you are a fan of your own work. But some other things to say, not to say besides you're going to love this, are like, don't say this will be number one at the box office, this is going to win the Oscar for Best Picture, this has great international appeal, it's really, really funny, it's commercial, any of that sort of stuff. Instead, let the listener form their own opinion.
That's excellent advice. Now, when you're talking, you brought a question to mind. I've always heard that a lot of times when you're pitching, you should try to be like, it's Pulp Fiction meets Kangaroo Jack. You know,
Kangaroo Jack. That's the movie. You thought of it. Yes.
I know. That's why I said it. Yeah, so like people combine, it's like The Matrix meets, unnecessary roughness. I don't know.
Right. Yes. People do that.
Is that good? Is that bad? Is that good or bad?
I'm anti the this meets that phenomenon. A lot of people promote it, but those are not the people who are buying projects. It is important for you to have an answer when someone asks you what project is yours most like, because that is a very common question. So you do want to have an answer for that. And a lot of times what people are asking is really about tone. Like how broad is the comedy, or how severe is the violence, or how serious is the sex? Is it just light-handed, or are you really seeing, penetration or whatever it is? So they're really asking about tone, but people often misconstrue this to think that it's about plot or about characters. And so if people lead with a this meets that, what often happens is that the person who's listening is going to be going along sort of ticking in their mind, how is this most like Pulp Fiction? How is this like Kangaroo Jack? Where's the kangaroo? Where's the whatever? Instead of listening to the story as an original idea, they're just like listening to it as a hack of these two things. And I don't think that's the best way to present a project. And so often the way that people choose this meets that, I mean, they're totally bizarre and totally off, so that you're sitting there listening and you're like, this is nothing like Kangaroo Jack or whatever it is. That's not – so do have an answer for what your project is most like, particularly regarding the tone, but don't lead with a this meets that.
And if you do have that title or that movie in your back pocket, try not to choose a movie that's bombed.
Yes, definitely. Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Really like
and I'll
Howard
say,
the Duck. It's really like Howard the Duck.
Right. I mean, in my first studio meeting when I was an executive, and I had found a project that was really like Election. You remember the Reese Witherspoon?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, Election's a great movie. So I was like, this is going to be the next Election. And my boss looked across the table at me, and he was like, never say that movie again. I was like, okay.
Because they might have not liked it.
Because it was a box office bomb. Yeah, it bombed.
Right.
Even though it's a terrific movie, I think. So, only keep your references to things that have been financially successful. If you're talking to anyone who's a potential buyer, investor, financier, that's what they're looking for.
That simple tip could save people, because I've had people pitch me things, and they're like, it's kind of like Howard the Duck. I'm like, stop. Why? Why
would I want to do that? Right. Yes.
Howard the Duck is a genius movie. It's very underappreciated. I'm just saying. But, okay, so my last two questions are the most hard-hitting and tough, so prepare yourself.
I'm ready.
What are your top three favorite films of all time? And what is one of the most underrated films of that you've seen?
Oh my gosh, these are hard hitting for me because I'm really terrible at this kind of question because it's constantly changing. And every time I say an answer after I hang up, then I'm like, oh, I didn't give the right answer. I will say E.T. is one of my favorites. E.T. at the moment, Father of the Bride. I know it's no. Best movie ever made, but it's just a classic that's playing around in my house at this moment. And God, I really am totally drawing a blank. I mean, I'll watch Pulp Fiction any day. I mean, there's never enough time to watch that a zillion times. And underappreciated. Let's think. Trying to think if there was
Election
like a movie.
is one of them.
Election, sure. I mean, I think that's totally underappreciated. I love that movie, and I would watch it again right now. It's been years since I've seen it, so actually I wonder if it still holds up, but I bet it does.
Right. Right. And I think we could both agree that Pulp Fiction would have been better with a kangaroo in it, obviously. So I'm just saying. Jerry missed out. I'm just saying.
Yeah, really. Mm-hmm.
So where can people find you?
I am easily findable on the web. My website is goodinaroom.com, and I have lots of free resources available for filmmakers, lots of screenplays people can read, and also articles for people to help who are going to be pitching a project, to give them advice about what they should and shouldn't do. So goodinaroom.com, and I'm also on Twitter at goodinaroom and have a Facebook page also called Good in a Room.
Great branding.
Thank you. It's consistent, if nothing else.
Exactly. Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be working on my pitches going forward. After reading her book, Stephanie's book, Good in a Room, I really realized a lot of the things I was doing wrong in doing my pitches. And pitching is just such an important part of filmmaking. As a director, as a screenwriter, as a costume designer, you're always pitching your ideas. You're always selling your ideas in one way, shape, or form. So it's basically you're marketing yourself, you're selling yourself, but you're selling your ideas. And how to be able to do that with a very short amount of time and in a very tight quarter, sometimes like an elevator, to be able to express your ideas will give you definitely a leg up on the competition, if you will, moving forward and getting projects made, getting screenplays sold, getting movie gigs, and so on. And I think it's definitely a skill that everybody in the world can use in one way, shape, or form. You're always selling your ideas. You're always pitching, even if it's to your wife on where you want to go to dinner that night or what movie you want to watch. It's a pitch. It's a sales pitch of one way, shape, or form. So I really thank Stephanie for being on the show. She was awesome. And definitely check her book out, Good in a Room. I'll leave all of her links and a link to her book in the show notes, which you can get at indiefilmhustle.com/049. And please, guys, don't forget to head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave us an honest review of the show. It really helps us out a lot. Thanks again for all the support, guys. We really appreciate it. Hope you got a lot out of this one. Keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.